We're on, okay. Okay, good evening. It's 6 o'clock on Thursday, November 14th. This is the Harwich Finance Committee meeting. We'll notice for anyone in the audience who intends to record this meeting that we are recording this meeting, and that if you intend to do it yourself, please contact the chair. I will also notice that there is no one in attendance in the public with us today. So, having said that, with us today remotely is Scott. Hello, Scott.
Hello.
Mark Kelleher is here, Dan is here, Michelle is here, Bob McCready's here, and the chairman, Peter Hughes, is here. Dana DeCosta might be calling in on the road, but I don't know that for sure. So I will declare a quorum. I'm just taking some notes in case this doesn't record for some reason. Okay, first item is approving the minutes of October 10th. I have a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Mark Keller.
I'll do that.
There's a second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Any comments, questions, whatever? Okay, hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. We're gonna do a roll call. Mark?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Bob?
Abstain.
Okay. Yeah, that's right, you weren't here. Thank you. That's good. Scott, on the minutes?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
the chairman's an aye, so it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 0, 1 abstention. Okay, new business. Dana spent time working on a document having to do with revolving funds. In the shape it's in now, he sent it to me as a draft. I fed back comments to him, and then he put it back into this form. I wanted to make sure that the document, which to a large part focuses on what we did on 204 Sisson Road as far as recommendations go regarding the revolving fund, and putting most of their expenses, if you will, and revenue into the operating budget. Okay, so I wanted to make sure those numbers between that report and this report were consistent. Okay, he still has some cleanup to do. Like, for instance, I think the last sentence is here is thanking recognizing care, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that doesn't really apply to this document. It applied to the previous one. Okay. There are also items in here that once we approved this, there's some information he was not able to glean easily. So we would push this, I think, through Jeff's handler and request that information so that he can finish the document. And basically, embedded in here when you read it, there are a couple of accounts that look like they haven't been active, at least from what he could tell. And the question is, do they need it anymore? You know, do we need those things along with 204? So, yeah.
Quick question, who is he? He couldn't glean that information. Who are you referring to?
Dana.
Dana, okay, I'm sorry.
He was just going by what information he could get off of whatever. Okay? So when we get down to it, his next round of this will, if you guys are okay with it, we'll give it to Jeff and say we have these specific requests for information. Okay? Anybody else? Everybody okay with that concept that we'll try and get some more information to make this as complete as possible?
And then I imagine the big meeting will be when we meet with the select board to go over this.
Yeah, but you know, this is going to evolve over time. We're not going to solve all these. The first one is 204 Sisson, which we've already sent in the documentation for. And then I think the easy ones, if there are easy ones, are figuring out things that haven't been active in the last couple of years, and do we really need them or not? You know, Michelle.
So do we have a recommendation on how much, and maybe I missed it in reading through the documents, how much the revolving fund should be for Sisson 204
It
Sisson.
was in the document.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna recall off my head.
yeah,
I think the number was that almost everything would go in the budget, except for those part-time labor hours that were associated with programs. And I believe the recommendation was to cap that at 20,000.
I believe that's
That's up
correct.
for debate,
Yeah.
but we threw that out there, as
Yeah.
opposed to a $300,000 thing.
yep,
You know, I mean, as far as I know, it's the only operating building in town that doesn't have a budget,
Right.
right? Everybody else has a budget. Why wouldn't you have a budget?
Right.
So, anyhow, it's up to the selectmen, and we'll have those discussions when we get to the budget. So, yeah.
These revolving funds, I assume, according to the law, were established by some kind of ordinance.
Yep,
And is it possible to get a copy of that ordinance?
I mean, the votes to establish them,
Well, the ordinance itself, in terms of how it was worded.
I think you referenced the Mass General Law,
yeah.
that in
Yeah.
that document, I think Dana referenced where, when it was established and where you can find it. Were you
Once you're
able,
able to print it,
See,
you
I
can.
couldn't access it?
You're still not able to see the document?
I can see it, yeah, no, I can see it, but I can't print it.
Here,
It's hard to read.
well, there.
Yeah, you can have my
that's
copy.
fine.
Take mine, I'll print another one home.
That's what I was gonna do, yeah.
It's on
I
ours.
couldn't print mine,
There you go.
thank you.
But it's in there. I believe he referenced it. He tells the history of it.
I was just curious whether the.
And then every year, the revolving funds at town meeting
Right,
have to get voted as to what their expenditure limits are, not how much money you can hold in the account. I
Yes.
mean, the account, if your expenditure limit is, say, 100,000, in theory, you could build it up to $5 million and,
yeah.
you know, basically no one would know.
I was just curious as to whether the ordinance had any language which defined how the resolving fund can be canceled.
Okay, that's fair. And I think if you also, the document we had circulating around, we all got copies of a couple years ago, is the Mass Municipal Finance book,
Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
if you will. I think if you go in there and look at, just kind of, you know, put in revolving accounts.
Yep.
And there's a lot of information there about things like, they talk about only being able to spend on part-time personnel, not full-time personnel.
Right.
You know, that kind of thing, so.
and fringe benefits have to be
Yeah,
paid if we're
yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you read the document, if you have specific input to it, edits, if you will, pass them on to Dana.
Okay,
I'll talk to him when he gets back, and we'll try and get this thing at least put in a form where we can give it to Jeff and say, okay, we have some holes here, we need some information, just like we did with Sisson Road.
so our purpose in
Yeah,
addressing the revolving funds is whether they need to be continued or not?
need to be what?
Continued or not, if there's no activity in them?
No, there's several things that go on in that document. Dana talks about, do we need some of them or not, due
Right.
to lack of activity, and we don't know that yet.
Right,
There could be some that maybe the level of expenditure isn't correct. So for instance, on 204 Sisson, the recommendation was to take it from 300,000, where it is now, basically paying all the expenses of the building, down to 20,000. With the other, put, you know, with the basic operation of building, put in the budget, okay? But then there can be other entities that want to go in there. Dana talks in there about potentially trying to recover the administrative cost of administering these things. In other words, to put it simply, there's an accounting cost associated with dealing all this stuff.
Right.
Where, you know, as a town, we're paying for an accounting department.
yep,
Well, maybe a portion of that should be charged against that revolving account.
yeah.
Even if it's $100, I mean, whatever it is, a concept, that's all. So there are those kinds of things embedded in there you'll see. Okay?
Okay.
All right, Scott, did you have something?
Yeah, when I read through this, there was a quote by some guy named Ken Woodland, who is author author of something called Ask the Chief of Municipal Finance Law that I thought was pretty helpful. It said that the purpose of a revolving fund is to capture activities that cannot be budgeted. And it seemed to me that that referred to activities that are variable in nature, such as the programming in 204, where if you have an event, you need to hire part-timers, you charge for their services, and you hopefully break even.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of the year, you don't really know how much of the volume of that activity is going to be, so you put it in a revolving fund and hope that it breaks even. And within that study of 204, we found other activities that are within the revolving fund that can indeed be budgeted for, like the building costs,
Yeah.
and the utilities, as well as the revenues from the leases of the studios that in effect fund those costs. And that, I think, is the underlying reason why we're suggesting that those more predictable activities, both revenue and expense, be moved out of the revolving fund and put into the regular operating budget.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think that sort of a concept, if applied to the other revolving funds, could be useful, and maybe it could be explained more explicitly in the document, that if we apply that principle to each of the revolving funds that are still active, obviously close down the inactive ones, but use that sort of an approach for the active revolving funds, then at least we have an overlying, reason for our approach.
Okay,
So
so
put certain things back.
I'd encourage you to edit the document, give it back to Dana with that specific edit in it,
Okay.
if you will, or comments in it, right? I mean, typically, in the
Okay.
past, revolving funds are, I remember them from like youth and rec programs where they were gonna run a baseball league or something, and they had no idea who was gonna show up, but they knew they needed to charge everybody $20. I don't know, I just made that up, right? And they might get 5 kids or 500 kids. And based on how many showed up, they had to get, instructors and equipment or whatever, and that made sense, right? But not the operation of a building. I mean, it just doesn't. And maybe some others that are, it's kind of sitting here, low level, that nobody's paying attention to. It's an opportunity to try and clean it up. Let's just put it that way. Okay? All right, anything else on that topic?
So just to be clear, that any comments that we have should go directly to Dana?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and then what he will do is, he will massage the document or edit it, okay? Send us a final version, whether it's through me or whatever, it'll go to all of us, so you can read it one more time. And then I would funnel it through Jeff to say, hey, we need information here, there, and there to complete this document. But this will be ongoing for some time. Okay?
Okay.
All right, fabulous. Okay, November 2nd, Mass Municipal Finance Committee meeting. I know Dana, Mark Kelleher, Michelle, and Scott went. Wow, we had almost the whole team there.
Did we violate
Who
open
wants to
meeting
give
law?
us a summary of what transpired?
Or start?
I'll start. The opening statement was made by a guy who runs the budgets for the state. I forget his title, whatever. But what he did say is state revenues have a slow increase going on. It's not going to be like past years where they went up quite a bit. The migrant crisis is crimping the state budget, and without the millionaires tax, we'd be really squeezed based on revenues. That was the keynote.
So excuse me, was he or other people there advocating that the millionaire's tax was a great thing because it's?
They didn't advocate one way or the other, but they showed graphically the effect it's had on
Yeah.
state revenues, and it's been very good, at least this last budget term. They had a credit rating agency exposition. They mentioned the State Opportunity Fund, which I can't really give you much more information on, but that's a resource to be used. Standard & Poor's does 77% of mass towns, 30% Moody's. They did say it's getting to be more of an issue with bonding and with coastal issues, like coastal resiliency, type of things.
Yeah.
So that's You know, they may be looking for that in the future for coastal towns. I would imagine definitely Chatham, perhaps us. They did
Look,
say
I'm
that
sorry, Mark, looking for what? They may be looking for what?
if you have something, you know, I just put coastal issues, but that goes into their formulation.
Probably as a coastal community, you probably get a negative
Are you talking about bond
portion
rating?
on your bond rating. Because
On your
at some
bond-
point,
okay.
at some point, they're gonna figure out there's a risk associated being on the coast as opposed to being in Springfield or something, you know what I mean? I'm just,
So
I
this
can
is
comment on
factors
that.
in, this is about factors on bond rating.
Correct.
Okay.
Michelle was there, she could probably, even though she was shivering from being so cold.
It was so cold in there. So, I took some notes. They went over basically the 4 bond rating agencies, their bond rating mechanisms, or, you know, their key, you know, AAA, AA, whatever, how they rate. And
did they have a chart of all the towns in Massachusetts and what their bond ratings were, or are?
no, but they did state that Massachusetts has some of the highest bond ratings in the country. So generally Massachusetts is, you know, pretty well rated.
What's the Harwich bond rating?
A AA maybe? I don't know. Does anybody know? It's pretty good.
Joe Powers mentions it quite a bit, but I can't think.
It's high. I know it's,
It must say in the website somewhere.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not gonna repeat it, but it's a good little homework assignment for everybody to go figure it out.
Moody's has been around the longest. So the 4 main ones are Moody's, Fitch, S&P, and this new one that I don't know, Cabra. Moody's and S&P have been around the longest. Moody's been around the longest. Moody's and S&P are the main ones in Massachusetts. So the point that Mark was making is they all have a methodology for determining what your rating is.
Sure.
And lots of different things go into it. One of the main components is what's the ability of you to, as a municipality, to raise taxes to pay off your debt. And so anything that impacts your residents' ability to take on new income tax, residential taxes, real estate taxes, would impact that rating. So that makes sense, right, intuitively. So they look at the residential versus commercial mix. They look at your local economy. They look at lots of different things. And there's slight variations of each. But the new thing they're starting to look at is coastal communities and the fund balance's ability to cover water emergencies or weather emergencies. So I think the hurricane, they're starting to really look at, you know, with climate change and the impact of that on weather, if that's going to affect communities. So that's going to start going in there. And then they talked about how property insurance rates have gone through the roof. Where they say Massachusetts on average.
For municipalities or for?
Well, no, this related to, so they're figuring if a person has higher property insurance rates, they have less available cash to pay for real estate taxes.
Okay.
That's how they go in there. So, for example, they talked about Texas on average had their increase was 60% on house insurance, property insurance. Massachusetts on average was 20%. So this is going to weigh into the ratings. These are some nuances that they brought up. So that was pretty much what we covered on bond ratings.
I think people are getting more, you know, you see all these natural disasters going on. And I know, for instance, there's a little bit of an aside, but my church is trying to get increased flood insurance, let's put it that way, and the numbers are unbelievable.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Unbelievable.
This is what they're talking about,
Like, you
yeah.
know, $65,000 for a year.
Scary.
But it all comes down to...
Oh, it is scary. I mean, it's like it's almost like you have to self-insure,
Yeah.
right? And the other thing is that I'm sure everybody knows, whatever goes on in the rest of the country, we're paying towards it. I mean, our insurance rates have to go up to pay for whatever's going on in, I know, Western North Carolina and all that. I mean, it's just the way the industry works, right? So,
But, you know, bond ratings are tied to
Yep.
how much it costs you to borrow.
Right,
So
right.
you want a good rating. And I know Harwich has a good rating. I just don't remember what exactly it is.
Anybody talk about where they think the bond market is going in the next couple of years based on, what is it going, the rates go, are they going up, they're going down, they're going sideways?
That was not discussed, I don't
Okay.
think.
All right. Anything else at the meeting,
They
Mark?
did mention, they recommend 2 months of operating expenses set aside in reserves. So they have that amount in reserves, 2 months of operating expenses.
So the assignment I want to give you is you come back and tell us next month that we satisfy that criteria.
That's fair.
Yeah.
You mentioned the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association website. And that's where a lot of these budget plans get awards for being complete and everything like that. So that's something to look at for the future. GFOA, they have a whole
GFOA.
GFOA.
Very familiar with it.
Okay.
No, there's our expert right there.
There's your homework. How do we join up? What do we do? But anyways, a lot of these towns, that's kind of the goal they search for. But the only other thing, we went to another symposium, and Scott may have gone to it as well, but they had Mansfield town administrator, and what he works on, just some of my notes, is one town, one budget. What I found intriguing is, he did say 3 to 5% of the budget for free cash, so you try and figure that in ahead of time, what he said. But he does a lot of communication stuff prior to town meeting. Like, in other words, he'll have a small budget meeting, 2 people from the finance committee, 2 people from the select board, 2 people from the schools. Publicized meeting, but to kind of work things out ahead of time so you can kind of, so maybe similar to what we're gonna have, but even ongoing. So by the time you get to town meeting, we've got a lot of the major issues discussed and maybe worked out on, so.
Okay.
Did I have any other notes?
I also have some more information on the
He
meeting.
did say, communication is very important. They have a sped stabilization fund in there. This is what I found interesting, at least in his town in Mansfield. They were running 12 to 15% increase in health insurance. Their pensions went up 7 to 8%. He did mention the importance of having a grant writer for the town and town message boards, so.
What's the approximate budget of Mansfield, do you know?
Pardon me?
What's the budget of Mansfield? I'm just,
It's a bigger town than we
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
We didn't look at any schematics of what his budget was, and I can look it up, but I would imagine it's probably 20 or 30 or 40% more than we have.
yeah.
And they do have a big, because it's a bedroom town from Boston, they do have quite a big school population.
Right. Yeah. And that can skew the numbers, I mean, it's,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
70%, of course, we're almost the same place, it's 70% of the budget is for schools.
Yeah.
I think we're almost in that same
Right,
ballpark.
right.
But yeah, it was just for future reference, it's a great meeting to go to. And I don't want to talk too much. Michelle or Scott, if you want to add in, so go ahead.
Scott, did you enjoy
I
it?
thought that the session that discussed this GFAO budget review process included 14 criteria that they use to mandatory criteria that a budget document needs to include in order to win this award. It's not as if there's the top 3 budgets in the state. You could have 10, you could have 50 qualifying towns. And I thought the principles were really well thought out. They distributed the document after the fact, so we could share that with the committee. But little by little, if we could add 2 or 3 of those to a budget document that I don't think exists in Harwich yet, that comes out long before the town meeting, that includes things like what are the town's financial policies in terms of debt service as a percentage of total operating budget, and other criteria. But principles as well as presentation elements to a budget document that are mandatory in order to win this award. Not that winning the award is something that we would set as a goal in the near future, but I think that the 14 criteria are actually very useful ones and valid ones that we could perhaps share with the finance director once we recruit one to work on little by little.
Okay, have you memorialized what those criteria are? Did they pass out something, or you have something, or?
Yeah, they're in the PowerPoint. I was just looking over it again today, so am I allowed to send it to the group or send it to you, Peter?
Why don't you send it to me? And what I would like to do is, if you come in person next month, maybe you can bring your laptop and we'll take a look at it, right?
Yeah.
And why don't we do that?
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
So I'm gonna put you down for that, so.
Next month, I think I'm in Costa Rica, sorry. I won't be in person, but
All right,
I'll send you the PowerPoint at least for now.
okay, good, thank you. I'm just making a note, thank you. All right, anything else on that, on the meeting?
I have some notes from, I attended the session on open meeting law, which was run by Karis North, who's an attorney with Murphy Hess. So, you know, they covered a lot, those guys went to the other, meeting. But she covered, a lot of really good, interesting, items. She talked about, the fact that a meeting quorum has to be based on what the body was constituted on. So not, you know, how many seats are filled.
So it's 9 for us.
So it's 9.
So the quorum is 5.
Yeah, so if we had 6, it would still be 5. You know, if we had 6 people on the.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
I'm just clarifying that for
Yeah.
everybody. She spent a lot of time talking about the importance of having conversations relating to business in your meeting, like not in parking lots, not over coffee, you know, all that. I thought it was interesting.
One of the prime purposes of the open meeting law,
Yeah,
so you conduct
yeah.
your business here, not somewhere else.
Exactly. She said that all meeting minutes must be available on paper. They have to be available on paper because, you know, people were saying, oh, can we just keep them digitally? And she said no, because they can be destroyed.
Well, just to be clear, when the minutes go from us to the town clerk to be preserved, right? And if someone looks on our website, which I did today for whatever reason, you can get our minutes and the agendas and whatnot on the website. Somebody can print that, whatever, but I think what you're saying is there needs to be a physical hard copy put somewhere in a vault.
Correct.
Yeah,
Has
which
to be
is the
retained.
clerk. I believe that's the clerk's responsibility, not this clerk
Yep.
for the committee, but our town clerk,
Yeah.
I believe.
I mean, these were things that I wasn't really that aware of. I mean, we've done training, but I guess I didn't really.
Yeah, no, it's important to
Focus on
preserve
that.
the records of the town. I mean,
Yeah.
it's-
And then she talked about the importance of if someone comes to talk during your meeting, the importance of letting people talk, even if they come to your meeting and they're discussing a matter that, you know, is controversial or this or that, that you don't try to limit what is discussed in any way, provided it's done in a, you know, polite, you know, orderly fashion. She
So
Talk.
for Jeff Handler, who joined us, by the way, maybe
Yeah.
10 minutes ago, just to point that out for people at home or whatever. The selectmen's policy they're talking about on public comment, are you saying they should just let people go on?
No, that, you know, it's presented in an orderly fashion with the time limit or what have you, but that you don't try to stop people from talking about something if you don't agree. That she was just making that general
So
statement.
don't turn them off just because they say, I don't.
You
agree
don't
with that."
like what they're saying. Yeah, you don't want that.
But having a time limit, I think, can be,
As long as
Use-
everybody gets the same time.
yeah, I
Yep.
mean, if you said, okay, we're gonna discuss this, and by the way, I'm making this up for public comment, we'll let anybody who wants to speak have 5 minutes, but,
Correct.
you know, that's it. So-
Yeah, and for example, if someone brings something up that's not on the agenda, the
Yeah.
importance of saying, we're going to put that on next month's agenda to give people proper notice
Yep.
that it's going to be something that's discussed. I thought these were all valuable.
Yeah, that's
Well,
important.
it draws the distinction, or should draw the distinction, I don't know if she did, between making a comment and discussion. That a comment is just that, it doesn't engage, the other side, the public body, doesn't engage, period.
Correct, yeah. And then once it
And then
starts,
if it's supposed to be, if the person wants to try and engage in a discussion, it needs to be stopped.
correct, yeah. And
Not
just
engaged
stated that,
in.
you know, we're going to put this as an agenda item
Yeah.
for next meeting.
And by the way, it's only fair because not everybody might agree with that person. Maybe not everybody has the same materials or background information and whatnot. By putting it to the next agenda, whatever, allows at least the public to say, okay, I got some notice that this is coming,
That's right, yeah.
and I want to go to that meeting, or, you
Yeah.
know, I have some questions I want to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was valuable advice. And then she talked about minutes, what minutes should include. The list of documents that are reviewed in a meeting should be listed on the minutes. Decisions made, actions taken, roll call votes, member name and vote. So I thought these were all good comments. And then she talked about whether or not a meeting could be hybrid or remote or all in person. And she said that that's up to the chairperson to determine whether or not, how they want the meeting to run. So,
Okay. Anything else? Any other topics at the meeting? Do you?
we did talk about emails. That was a question that I asked, you know, because of freedom of information. She did talk about the importance of using a town email address, and that's later on our agenda. I can give you an update on that.
Yep.
She said in the meantime, what she would recommend is setting up an email account solely for the purposes of doing your business, FinCom business, for example. This makes it easy for them to access emails if there is a freedom of information request that they're going to ask you for all your emails. So I thought that was
So
also
Michelle, after that meeting, you went to the workshop, I guess we'll call it, almost immediately set up her own separate email.
Yeah, so I
think,
I set up an email, mgalucci, howitchfincom@gmail.com. So everything now that I'm doing related to the committee is going to be through that Gmail account.
And we'll hear from you in a little bit as to where we are getting our email
Correct.
addresses. and that
Yep.
type of stuff. Anything else? Mark? Scott, do you have anything else to add for that meeting?
No,
Okay.
no,
Just so you know, we're talking about a week and a half ago, 4 of our members went to the Massachusetts Municipal Association Finance Committee meeting, which is in Sharon, I believe.
Yes,
Is that
Sharon.
Yeah, and they were just reporting back on, what they heard or whatever. Okay, good, thank you. And by the way, I thank you for going to the meeting. I think it's good to get engaged with other people that are doing the same kind of business we're trying to do. And I think you probably did find that there are a lot of people out there doing this kind of work, right? Okay, before I move on from new business, I just want to, for Jeff, for your benefit, I think you realize when we came before the selectmen before that Dana expressed an interest in working on revolving accounts. And he's done some preliminary work on that and issued us a draft report that we got a few comments tonight as feedback. People are going to give feedback to Dana. And then once we get that, we will pass it on to you. Just like we do with 204, not to say this is the final report, but there'll be some information we need. Like Dana has identified, or he thinks he has identified, some of those revolving accounts that may not have been active for 2 years or something. Well, okay, is that true? And should we do something about it if we're not using it? I mean, I don't know. It's just one of those things. But you will see that probably around Thanksgiving, I'm guessing, okay? So, yeah, no, that's all good. Okay, old business, capital outlay. So Mark Kelleher and Scott You're a capital outlay people. I think you've had a couple of meetings since our last meeting. So could you give us an update, one or the other, or both, or tell us where you are, what the plan is?
Sure. Scott, you wanna go you first, or you want me to?
I could just give like a 50,000 foot observation that the capital plan that goes out to 2030 now, 2026 through 2030, the annual spending in that plan is in 2 to 5 years, in 27 and 28. If you exclude the projects that are funded separately, either by water or by golf, those 2 years represent real spikes of about $15 million per year. I think that is in 27 and 28, which could represent real stress on the budget. I'm not sure how close we are to 2.5%, Proposition 2.5 limits, but I think it could easily exceed those limits, and in terms of the debt service addition, if it's funded with debt. So it's just something to be aware of that could be right around the corner. The other 3 years are averaging around $5 or $6 million a year, which maybe with a little bit of fine tuning could fit within free cash. That is not including the golf and water, which are funded by their own enterprise funds.
So is there any discussion about trying to smooth that out? Any discussion about trying to smooth that out?
Well, I was going to say the two projects there are two major projects that are causing that spike. In 27, I believe it's the DPW building replacement for about $10 million.
Yeah.
And in 28, it's the Saquatucket Harbor bulkhead replacement. And I think by their very nature, since they're both single large projects, it would be hard to spread them out. I mean, fortunately, they're not in the same year, but I think it'd be difficult to spread them out. You could push them out further, but that would just create a problem in that year, potentially. But my own frustration is not having any read on how close we are to reaching that trigger point against Proposition 2.5, which kind of raises the profile of the project and requires, a vote of 2/3 majority to have the project approved, as I understand it, as opposed to a simple majority for a project that would fit within 2.5.
Well, if you're gonna do a borrowing, it's not a simple majority, it's a 2/3 to bond, so. Is that what you're talking about?
Okay.
It's a
So that
if
would
you wanna
definitely
borrow
in
$10
those
million,
years
if
trigger
you're gonna
that.
borrow $10 million to build something, and you're gonna borrow the money, that has to go before town meeting, and there has to be a 2/3 vote, and then it has to go out to the ballot, usually, right? So.
Yes.
Is that the question you're asking? The threshold, or?
No, I didn't realize that any borrowing requires the 2/3. I was more thinking about the point at which we exceed what is authorized under Proposition 2.5, which is, I guess, a separate trigger.
Yeah, it is a separate tree. That's like trying to do capital projects without borrowing any money and try and do it under basically your operating income, right? I mean, that's the 2.5 number. It has to do with the, actually what your tax levy can be, basically, can go up by 2.5%. Now, you can get growth and other things that come into it that make it go beyond 2.5%.
Right.
But I would not think, let's put it this way, if we thought that, and this is just my opinion, if we thought that we were gonna build a DPW building for $10 million, I'm just throwing that number out, $10 million, and we were going to do it with free cash, I would tell you we were lousy managers of our money and that we're overtaxing people because of generating too much free cash. I mean, that's, in the end, it's all taxpayer money, right? I mean, there's no free lunch. Even when people talk about things like I saw the middle school roof, everybody's getting happy because the state said, oh, we'll kick in some money. Well, okay, it's a $6 million roof or something. It's like, that's real money, right?
Yeah, it is real money.
Anyhow, so, okay, we'll keep going. Keep going with your thought process.
Well, those two projects are one issue, but the other projects for this next year's request, which total 8.5 million, of which 2.7 is either golf or water, leaving 4.8 that would be in the general budget, which coincidentally or not, is around what we've heard is going to be available for free cash, if in fact we decided to devote all of that free cash to capital projects and not add any to
And
stabilization funds or such.
does that first year include the Brooks Academy projects?
No, that has not been included yet. We don't have a number for that yet.
Is the intent to
We heard
include?
today, we heard today that Joe was meeting with, I'm not sure if it was Sean or others involved in the project to fine tune that, and we sent the message that we definitely need to see that project in the list.
So Scott, you and I, as members, I guess, from the Finance Committee of whatever we called it for Brooks Academy, the stakeholders or something like that, have had only
Right.
one meeting and have had no feedback on anything beyond that meeting, right? That I know of.
Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. So I'm not sure how they're doing it. Anyhow, that's fascinating to say the least. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Just a little rundown, we still haven't done facilities yet, but fire department, they're front-loading because there's a 3 to 4 year wait for a lot of pieces, both ambulances and engines, so we're gonna see some front-loading for both ambulances and engines.
Excuse me, Mark, you, front-loading to the plan,
Yeah, in other words,
Order them early.
they're ordering early because it's gonna take 3 to 4 years to actually get them in. So for
Okay,
example, they have
but-
$1,100,000 for fiscal year '26. Normally they just put in for one, or actually they got one last year, they wouldn't even put one in, but because of the time it takes to manufacture these and the delays in production, they're pre-ordering to get it here in time 3 to 4 years from now.
so when are they gonna want money?
Yeah.
That's what
Well,
I'm
that's a good
trying,
question.
Yeah, what's the
That's my
cash flow
question.
associated
Is
with
it-
it?
I don't know the answer. If they,
the-
and I was gonna ask that and I failed to. If
But-
they just need to, and this may have more to do, just need to put a deposit on it?
Well, you
I
have
would
to make,
imagine they
you
don't
have to
need-
make the commitment, you're gonna buy this thing.
Would you have to put all the money out 3 to 4 years ahead of time? That
I
don't
doubt it,
know.
but I think what you have to do is you have to bond it in anticipation of paying for it. So you do the bond up front to cover the whole thing. And the treasurer hopefully would take those bond proceeds, if that's what we're doing it, and invest them in something so we're getting some return on our money while we're paying interest on the bond.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought of that, Bob. I didn't ask the question. Joe could probably best answer that, but that's, at least the fire department, that's what's going on. Golf, we haven't heard from yet. Harbor, as Scott mentioned, we have 2 big projects coming up. He wants $770,000 for engineering for the bulkhead at Sacotucket this year. He did with Sean Libby, talk about bringing back the engineer from the 2017 survey and seeing if in fact the bulkhead is deteriorated such that they really need to move ahead. There was mention and hope that they bring back the engineer, that they may say, it's not as bad as we thought it could be, maybe we could push out both the engineering, although I think they wanted to still do the engineering, but push out the construction several years, but, you know, and so that's a possibility. The harbor master said he could probably come up with the funds for that internally, so it won't be a thing for us.
Could I just ask the question, and you guys, it's way more detail than I'm sure you're getting involved with. But when Michelle talked about bond ratings being affected by coastal communities, et cetera, one of the questions you should at least push back on John Rendon, the harbor master, about is, are we in Harwich seeing any elevation in water, coastal water, and does that impact how he would design a bulkhead that's supposed to last, how long is it supposed to last, 50 years?
50 years.
Great point.
He
So,
did
I mean,
say-
does he have to deal with a potential 1 foot, right, I'm making this up, but,
But he did say that I think the bulkhead is gonna be at least 2 feet higher than the existing bulkhead. So
okay,
they are taking into effect some of the.
which also
Yeah.
impacts the cost of it, right?
sure.
Yep.
Is there any discussion, maybe it's too early, at the at your committee working sessions about taking the things in the first year to town meeting to get approval, but actually having bid prices. Has that been a topic?
It hasn't been a topic, and I know you've mentioned this before. It was not a topic. We're gonna have facilities maintenance. That could be, you know, a lot of the police departments off the state contract. The harbor is just the engineering. He wants to work with the engineer he's been working with. So in terms of construction, there's not a, you know, lot, except for facilities maintenance. We have $265,000 to rebuild the masonry in front of 204, and $100,000 for the, you know, the pad where they do the, you know, the construction material at the dump. That is broken all up, and that needs to be replaced. But we didn't speak about bid prices, so.
Okay, are there any again, I'm just asking off the top of my head, or do you know of, or could you ask next time, are there any projects that have previously been funded in the last couple of years that haven't been done, for whatever reason?
Well,
Like, is there a balance somewhere on some of these things that we should know about that could maybe help solve some of these other problems? And I don't know the answer to that, trust me. Michelle knows the answer.
No, I want to comment on that because that's been something that's been on my mind before. So we have these, you know, capital expenditures in our budget and we approve that, but we never really go back and find out, well, did we buy the 3 fire engines or did we only buy 2? And what happens in that case? That goes to free cash?
No, that's well, let's take an example.
Yeah.
And again, I have no facts. But let's just say in 204, we said, okay, we approve buying a generator. Has to be replaced. That was on the list, I don't know, last year, whatever year before. We have no feedback that says, did we, unless you drive by there, I guess, and say, did the generator get replaced? If not, you know, why didn't it? We don't need it for 4 years. I don't know. I mean, you know, tell us why, or tell us, yeah, we can check the box, we did that, and by the way, the money was spent, it was this much, this is how much was allocated, oh, there was a little balance left, okay, it's coming over here. Otherwise, they keep carrying it forward because it's been approved, it's been authorized, but not spent.
Well, I would think we have a capital asset inventory for the town. But that's a great question because that has come to my mind before.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Scott?
Yeah, I wonder if that's a question for finance more than the capital outlay committee. They probably don't get that sort of after the fact reconciliation of.
They probably don't, but yeah, but you might plant the seed there because you've got some of the players or actors there. You know, the town administrator, I'm sure, is there. You got Sean Libby there, who would know in that case what was done or not done.
Two
But
questions.
yeah, no, at some point it is the finance people once they get organized.
2 questions, Mark, or Scott, or whoever.
But
Is wastewater part of the plan? Wastewater spending?
yes,
I mean, we had this problem last year that it was zeroed out.
vehicle
The year before.
replacements was the only entry for wastewater.
Vehicle replacement
oh, the
Yes.
wastewater department, you mean?
Yeah.
for wastewater, so not the actual wastewater program,
No.
sewering the city.
Nothing on here, no.
Okay, that was one question.
They
The other
do have an
thing,
entry called watershed, which I think Maureen said is the construction, but there's no entry there.
okay,
So there's no like phase 27 at
yeah.
$700
And
million.
I'll share this with you after, you can look at it, just so you know.
And the other one relates to what you were just talking about. I thought there had been a comment that because, and I think we've seen, sometime over the last year, we've seen that there is a project document list with all of the status of all the projects. It goes on for pages and pages of what's in which status group. And I thought that the select, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought the select board had indicated they wanted to slow down on new projects to get more caught up on this building backlog of Was that part of the capital committee
I've heard
discussion?
I've heard that said at select board meetings. I don't know if that went into the generation of this.
So
At
it-
least for 27, we don't have a lot that, well, they've already been on the cap plan, it just moved up this year.
But it has not been part of the capital, capital outlay plan committee of their discussions, that they're limited, any kind of limitation on the plan due to this huge backlog of projects.
Yeah, no, I think they're focused on what's ahead as opposed to what's behind.
I mean, this is the town administrator's budget, he puts it together, he hears what the select board say, so I can't imagine he wouldn't have
That's-
put this together without
Yeah,
some.
no, I think the opportunity there is when we have our joint meeting on the capital outlay budget is to ask, that's an appropriate question to ask.
Yep, yep.
They won't have the answer that night, but it's something feedback-wise we should be able to get at some point. Okay.
Yep.
So, and I think, when you look at the history lately of funding a lot of these things with free cash, I can conjure up a scenario in my head that says, well, we're just banking free cash so we don't have to borrow for these things in the future because we know we can't get it done for 3 or 4 years, you know what I mean? So, and I'm not saying that's the case, but it could be. Yeah, all right.
But we could definitely propose that as an agenda item to the chair.
Yeah.
Right now, we're kind of rushing to get ready for, I think, what is the December 9th joint meeting? So we're getting these presentations now, which are filling up our agenda, 3 hours a meeting. So to squeeze in something like this, I think we probably would better wait for after these presentations are over and we get through that December 9th meeting. But yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, the 7/9 meeting, I haven't heard yet, but I'm assuming you're talking about the joint meeting between the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, which is a required meeting?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
which I think is set for December 9th.
Okay, well, that's all right. I'm sure we'll get a notice. Okay, anything else on that?
No, the police department's cruiser replacements. I did ask them about body cams, but that's still a negotiation thing with the union.
Chatham's using them, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. And, that's about it. I mean, years out, we have some things coming in, but in terms of 26, that's about it. 26 is not a real busy year. It's only, as Scott mentioned, 27 and 28 really pick up in terms of dollars.
Okay.
But we're moving on. We got, 3-hour meeting.
And is there any intent to bring the school, we talked last year with the schools about potentially bringing theirs into the plan, adding into the plan?
That's a real good question because, as you know, they've got funding for the roof, but the siding is a $6 million thing. And, I'll pose that question to Joe or Martha,
I thought the siding was
siding
close.
is separate.
No, but,
Roof is they got state funding on. The siding and the $6 million is.
yeah, but wait, what do we vote for last town
We
meeting?
voted for
Wasn't-
$2 million for the siding.
Right, the siding came first.
They hired an architect and found out that there was a lot more hidden damage that, they're gonna have to basically strip the sides of the buildings.
So you're gonna have to come back again?
That's
Yeah,
what I
okay,
believe they're gonna have to do.
okay, all right.
But that's a good question. I will bring it up, and Scott, if I don't do it, we'll bring it up to Martha about getting some confirmation if we should bring in the school cap plans.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've never seen the school projects on this particular list. Is there a reason why they haven't been on in the past? Anyone know?
Not necessarily, but I know last year we talked about trying to bring them into this and make it, so we weren't caught like, everybody seemed surprised last year that there needed to be work done in the middle school. In the kind of magnitude it was, kind of magnitude that it was, so. Okay, let's move on. Michelle, what's going on at the website, anything?
Yes, so, I've been working with Sarah Eaton, who works in IT for the town. And she's made the changes, some of the changes that we've requested. So she's updated our member list. She's added the 204 Sisson document. She's
So where
wait,
does that appear? Does that like, when
So-
you go to finance committee, is it like a tab or something, or?
the finance committee's listed, and then our members, and then down the bottom is links. So one of the questions I have for her is, how many links can it accommodate? So I think we're going back to 2021 right now. So 21, 22, 23, and we would add 24.
Okay.
So she didn't have 24, she was waiting
Okay.
for me to give her 24. So if 24, if it only accommodates so many, 21's gonna fall off, 24 is gonna come in. Your finance committee documents on there, we did that last year. The Sisson documents on there. So that's pretty much, I have a relationship with her now. I can, because the folks from Channel 18 last year are helping me, and now Sarah's
The
doing it.
Harwich channel, we call it now, I guess.
Yeah, it's
right?
now the Harwich channel. Jamie used to
Yeah,
help
Jamie,
me, yeah,
Jamie.
but now it's Sarah's.
Okay, and you're getting results.
Yes,
Good.
and then she's also doing the email addresses for us, getting us town email addresses. The reason why it's been delayed, because I told her we've been waiting months on this, is they had to procure a company to do this. So they probably had to do some through, I don't know how much money it's costing, but they had
Just-
to
mean
go
just
through.
for us?
They're probably getting them for other town members or committees. I don't know what other
Yeah,
committees have,
okay.
but we know that the town clerk recommended that we get
Yeah,
town
I mean, it
emails.
could be 250 people that need them, I have no
That's right.
idea. I had no idea.
So they had to go through procurement. She's finalizing that, I believe, and she said we should have email addresses coming.
Okay,
She did not give me an ETA, but I
Okay.
think we're close.
good, and I encourage you to keep in contact with her and keep moving things along.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So everything's pretty much, now the 24 document, is that available for posting?
The 204
No, the annual town,
report,
yeah,
that's part of the town report.
that's ready to post.
No,
For fiscal year 24, it's not ready yet, right?
I mean, what goes in
You're
there?
talking about the comprehensive financial
Yeah,
report?
yeah,
Yeah, that won't be ready till next February, so.
yeah, so that's not ready
Okay,
yet.
it's a different document.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what's on the website.
Okay, and by the way, why I brought that up, the annual write-up that goes into the town little book, the town
Mm-hmm.
report, I think is due in a couple weeks, so I'll have to write it up, but I'll send it around to you
Oh,
folks.
right.
And it isn't very involved, but it's, I'll just let you all have a shot at it. Okay?
Okay, great, yeah.
If you want to do something or add something, okay? So. Okay. ATM FinCom tracking documents, Michelle and Dana. I know,
So I have an update on that. He did send me the documents, there's 3 documents. I reviewed them, and he and I are supposed to meet in person to kind of go through them. At this point, I'm not committing to doing it solely myself, because I don't know if I'm going to have the time to do it. But I want to first meet with him and find out what it entails. So as you know, he has these documents, and when we start to go through the warranting process, he updates the documents regularly with information relating to the progress. So we talked about me taking it on. I want to fully understand that commitment
okay, that's
before
fine. That's fair.
yeah.
No, that's fair.
We might have to split it up. I don't know, maybe if someone wants to, I want to understand it first.
Okay. No, that's fair, and I would say that it's important because, and I don't know exactly what Dana was, I saw him a couple weeks ago, he was talking about his travel schedule and where he's going, with his trailer and all this, whatever. And I do know he's gonna spend basically the winter, once it's beyond Christmas, he's gonna spend the winter in Florida, and then he's going somewhere out, like the Pacific Northwest or something.
Right.
he did share with me that he will not be at town meeting this year, at least that's what he told me at that point in time. So I think it's imperative, now he can always look at this stuff and do it while he's on the road, but it's better to have someone here at this table who can work the numbers for it, so. But let us know, I think he's back in another week or so.
You know, I have a full-time job, so
I
it's,
know,
yeah.
I understand.
I just don't wanna
No.
commit to something and then, you
I'd
know.
rather have you come in here and say, you know what, I looked at it, it's a piece of cake,
Yeah.
or I looked at it and it's just too much, and so we gotta figure out who's gonna do it.
Yeah,
Well,
it
what-
needs
and
to
what's
get done.
What's got confusing the last couple of years is at times we've had 2 or 3 people sort of almost doing the same thing at the same time.
Well, we had Karen at one point
Yeah.
who was going down her own path doing it, and because quite frankly, Dana wasn't available for a couple of months, if I remember correctly, and there was not good communication between the two.
Well, and I know that I found that to some extent, I end up trying to update myself because the timing wasn't working, meaning the numbers were being changed, but but Dana didn't have an opportunity to update, and there was another meeting coming up.
Yeah.
And it gets last year, it can get the sequence of how much time is between again, when the board keeps changing, when the select
Well, it
board
gets fast and
changes the
furious,
money
yeah.
every month,
Yeah.
the dollars every Monday,
Yep.
and they want to talk about new dollars, and it can get confusing, because if you can't sit and wait for X amount of time necessarily for somebody else to be
It's a dynamic
doing the
situation.
update. Yeah,
is the way
it
to
gets
describe Yeah.
difficult, I think.
yeah, so to follow up on that very good point, so, you know, if a Friday afternoon, all the papers come out again, and you're supposed to go through all that, read it all, absorb it, go in and change all the spreadsheets, yeah, I'm concerned that timing is not gonna work for me. So then it becomes, well, what is another way we could do it as a
Yep.
committee?
Well, it's good to start digging in now and figuring it out.
Yeah,
The time's appropriate to do that, because once we get to, say, February, we gotta be, ready to go.
yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah.
I just want to clear up something, Michelle. I spoke to Dana in the fall before he took his trip, and I think what he asked me, and which is to write like what's on here, like in other words, petition article, home rule, the finance committee recommends this article, and the votes, and it gives some type of explanation.
Rationale.
Is that what you were talking about you were gonna
No.
do? Okay,
No.
so I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
He's talking about stuff like this.
Spreadsheets.
It's like-
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I can follow up along that line, and I'll talk to Dana, I'm hoping he has some of these customary things already printed up, he can send to me. We can start to take votes. For example, the Board of Selectmen have voted on already town offices and committees, reports of offices and committees, defray library expenses, promote the town of Harwich, supplemental cultural council, and herring fisheries. What I'd like to do is,
They have actually voted those
yes,
without having a warrant?
yep. I went back and I looked on the minutes, they are 4-0 and this and that.
Really? That's
And-
interesting.
Whatever, from my vantage point, if that's been done, I'd like to request sooner rather than later that we take votes on it, and that I can start to type these up and send them in, because, we had last year, we get delayed and we didn't
Right.
get it in on time. As a result, we had to do this
Yep.
separately from the
Right,
warrant,
right.
so.
It's a lot of work.
I
I
just
don't know
think
if
it's,
it's possible, if you're ready to take votes tonight, but then I can even actually copy what they had.
well, let's wait till we have a full group, which,
Okay.
when Dana's back, maybe Scott will be in person next month,
But that'd be very helpful.
we could do it next
Get
month.
to-
It's just surprising that without a warrant, they're voting it. I mean, it seems kind of weird to me, but.
I think they're doing it for the same reason I'm
Yeah,
saying,
probably.
to get ahead of the game.
You may want to start putting something about it on the agenda, even if it keeps carrying forward on
On our
agendas.
agenda?
Just so, as a placeholder.
So why don't you circle back to the young lady who puts all that together downstairs. I forget who that is.
Either Natasha or Danielle.
Okay, just if you don't mind, ask them and say, hey, we noticed, you noticed, that the selectmen have taken votes on some of these things. Are you ready for the finance committee to do the same and turn in their, their justification or rationale for customary articles so that we can get the process going? Just ask them that.
I will, I think to a great degree I have, but I will double check. So
Yeah.
for the next meeting, I'll
Yeah.
let you know.
Yeah.
So we can
Okay.
move along.
Yep.
So I'm kind of at a flashback, but I don't remember exactly from where. And I can't remember if it was one of those annual town meetings, but, is there a place, a central depository where we could share, documents? So that, I don't even know if we're permitted to do that, but, like documents, work in progress documents, things like that, where multiple people could work on them.
I don't think we are set up, I'm not sure that I don't know about the other departments, I'm not sure. I've not heard of Harwich being set up to have people use other products that lend themselves to team effort, to team participation. I'm not aware of
Does
it.
anybody remember discussing that? Sharing of
I mean, it makes
documents
sense
as they become available, as opposed to just getting 10 documents in your email, and then you have to go and you have to print them out, and then you have to compare them against the last version and figure out what changed. It's really,
Okay, so I think where you're headed with this, once you come back and tell us what you think, you can do or not do, and if we need to figure out how to divvy it up or go to somebody, use somebody else and do it, then I think it's probably appropriate to have a session with someone from the Board of Selectmen, someone from the Town Administrator's Office, the Town Administrator, and somebody, whoever is gonna do our stuff, to say, how do we make this work better? Because that's what you really, how do we share things, how do we do it better? And I'm pretty sure what happened is that the Town Administrator's Office, what's going on? Anyhow, would be probably the focal point and the control of it all, I'm guessing. And it would be a matter of sharing the document once input, is received, so that kind of thing. And also making sure it's secure so that
yes, of course.
somebody doesn't just go in and say, okay, let's make this number 2
Yeah,
billion.
secure portal. But I vaguely remember, and I can't remember if it was in the annual the Mass Municipal meeting where they talked about having a shared depository where people could access the latest version. Because
It probably was there.
it was, it may have been there. I'll have to check my
Probably.
notes.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, I've never heard of it here, that we have that. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I've never heard of it. Well, because it's also
Well, okay.
a good version is this.
So you may also ask your IT person.
Yeah. Who would know?
Does that capability exist within the system that we
Yeah.
have?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be great?
No, no,
Like
no,
you went
you're
in, latest version of the war, and
Right.
there it is.
Right, exactly,
Um,
yeah, okay. Any other to bring up?
I do,
Yeah,
I'd like to see if, now that we have the 24 budget done, correct, Bob? Has it been closed out?
The 24 books have been closed,
Okay.
yes.
How do we get information, in this specifically, we had in 23, we added 4 firefighters with $200,000 decrease in overtime. I would just like to find out the 24 overtime versus the 23, just to see how that worked out. So that's a question, maybe you can get that.
okay, so just back up, so one of the others, because I didn't have it on here, was, if you remember, Bob was assigned the task to represent this group in a meeting with the finance director, town administrator, and a select board representative, which is Scott, which is Jeff, to look at budget versus actual 23 and 24 to see if there are any obvious things that can be called out or changed or whatever. And I'm making this up, maybe some line item was $50,000 for 2 years and we didn't use any of it, or we used $5, you know, that kind of thing, to kind of clean it up as a starting point. They had their first session at 3 o'clock this afternoon, so I was gonna ask Bob to report on that. He will tell you what documentation they got or didn't get at that meeting, which will help them.
Okay, and the meeting that we did have, given that it was the first meeting and that there was no pre-meeting or agenda that existed, so we really, part of it was spent on everybody agreeing on what it was we were actually, what are we doing here? There was also, part of the meeting was spent, Joe particularly wanted to talk about the work that was currently ongoing on the 26 budget. In which case also what was mentioned was that there's expectation apparently at Monday's select board meeting, I believe, for them to be recommending a joint meeting with us that may be recommended for December 2nd, apparently. Again, until Monday night, we won't know what they finally talk about and decide concerning having to do with the 26 budget, apparently. Joe, and again, still on that part of the topic, Joe is actively working and on trying to accelerate the budget process, which as he's aware, everybody, us and the select board and everyone would like to have this all, the dates with regard to the 26 budget, all moving faster than they did in the past. So that is an active goal of the town administrator. Then when we finally got to talking about the topic that we were supposed to be there for, what was produced during the meeting was in this case, 36-page, but the standard thicker book that we got finally last year. It's rather than the 6-page summary thing that's in the
It was the Munis
warrant,
printout.
the Munis report that is like 35 pages long of all the departments. And this is the one that does do comparative actual budget adjustments, adjusted budget, actual for '24, which I did say was, from a priority standpoint, more important to me than '23. If we get there, we get there. But so that document exists, a number of copies of it that Jeff Handler has, and is concluding on essentially what he can, how he can distribute it, and meeting various whatever legal restrictions he has to make sure that he hasn't defaulted on. We didn't actually get to start doing line items in it, but Jeff and I agreed to meet likely Tuesday or Wednesday next week here, and hopefully have the two of us simply march through that document, identifying, and I'm pretty clear, I'm only interested in materially large line items and variances. Identify those and identify them to be used to create a list of the items we have questions about. Why are these variances? Questions, we need answers, and then we need decisions with regard to those answers as to whether those answers make sense to just that this is what we need to do for budgetary purposes, or whether or not they do in fact stand out as being items that should be questioned with regard to whether or not the budgets are not reflective of a reality that they can and should reflect. So that is still to happen, and that's where we are.
So could you, I'll get to you in a second, Michelle. Could you, just for Mark's edification, once you have access to that document, would you check in particular for your fire department overtime, so you, check budget versus actual, send the numbers, just so you, if you know what the numbers are? Yeah. Michelle?
So if we have budgeted, let's say we have budgeted $30,000 for X, whatever it is, and we actually spend $35,000, so we come in over budget, where does that $5,000 come from?
Well, that topic came up because Eric, brought up by Eric, the outside
Yeah.
accounting firm that he, I'm not sure concern is right, but he's not that happy with the way that the town does its year-end the way it does its transfers at year-end. That he, from his standpoint, he would at least encourage the thinking of the fact that you really should not overspend before you get the transfer done. You should, because you really can't overspend a budget. That the idea that you can count on having available transfer money at the end of the year is not necessarily available.
So
That's
for
true.
instance,
So
for instance,
it's-
what he would, I'm sure what he would support, let's say an overtime budget, whether it's police or fire or whatever, looked like they weren't gonna get to the end of the year, he would, I think, prefer that they come to the finance committee and say, we need a reserve fund transfer to cover $25,000 to get us, something like that, as opposed to just doing it in anticipation we'll be able to move money around to do it.
He didn't get that far in
Okay.
terms of recommending the finance committee's
Mechanism,
reserve fund,
yeah.
the mechanism. But I think he has a concern in overspending budgets without assurance of where the money's gonna come from. There was also conversation about the finance committee reserve that did include the fact that the town administrator is going to, I believe, is going to be asking to bring an application for a transfer from the reserve to us with regard to an issue that he's trying to deal with
Already?
already, yes.
Interesting.
And so I expect he will contact you about getting, or Mark or somebody about getting on the agenda for next meeting and submit a request form.
Yeah.
So just to comment on that, the reason why he's uncomfortable is because you're not supposed to spend beyond what's been appropriated, right? Is that the basis for him being uncomfortable with spending before you have that money available?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a good control.
Well, if you, I'm making this up, but if you think you're gonna need an extra 200,000 over here, and you think you're gonna get it because somebody's gonna underspend 300,000 over here, something could happen in the interim that says, hey, wait a minute, these guys don't have that $300,000. Now what are you doing, right?
Right, now you could get to the end of the year and not, in fact, have the available funds in under budgeted item or over budgeted items to be able to make the transfers.
Now, there's a catch-22 there, because if you strictly enforce that, then what that says is you're trying to get people to squeeze budgets. They're gonna say, well, wait a minute, I'm gonna make it bigger because I don't wanna run out.
Right,
Because if I run out, it's a disaster.
so there is a catch-22 there.
But that can contribute to snowballing and compounding of budgets going up.
I like your idea better, which is the finance committee has a pool of cash that can be
And-
considered for,
As we would try and control, for instance, last year we had $50,000, right? We wanted to go to 125, which you still want to go to. And part of the justification for that, matter of fact, the major reason for wanting that is if you're gonna ask department heads to budget tighter, you've gotta give them some relief out that says, hey, if something's not going right, I need to be able to come and get some relief.
Mm-hmm, agreed. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Dan?
Do we know what kind of monitoring process the town uses in order to track where it stands on its budget and where there could be potential shortfalls in terms of projections and what their plan is to ameliorate them?
I'm confident that you can get a munis report every month when the books are, you know, when the month is closed.
Is that what?
A munis report, that the finance people can get a
I'm
monthly
sure.
report
Yeah.
that tracks, you
Quarterly
know,
expenditure
hey, where are the
reports.
variances and where am I having trouble?
And the projections that,
Yeah,
the projections in terms of where they will stand at the end of the year. Because there's no reason why you wait until the end of the year to find out that you got a problem. I mean,
well,
sorry, that doesn't, it just does not
I'm
work.
fairly confident within munis, you can track things like, okay, what percentage of the budget
Yeah.
have you already eaten up and what percentage is left?
Well
Now,
familiar
that doesn't
with
mean
that.
on every
Yeah.
line item in a budget, it's equally done every month. Because that can be a little bit, you know, there could be things that, okay, it's 3 months here and I'm done. So you spend
prepay.
100% of it in 3 months, and then, you know, it shows
Unfortunately,
up.
this doesn't happen.
But, well, I think we've had so much turmoil in our finance department
Well-
that there probably has not been time to focus on those kinds of things.
Could be.
But that's what a good finance department will do for you.
As I recall, one of the goals that the select board discussed was a quarterly sort of review of the actuals, which I think to take care of seasonality would have to compare to same time last year. Because you're right, sometimes the whole activity is done in the first quarter, so you shouldn't
Yeah.
be scared that you've spent 100% of your budget.
Yep, exactly, exactly.
Been there, I've done it. We had quarterly reviews of where we stood financially and what our projections were and how we were going to resolve potential deficits. I mean, it's a
And that's where
no-brainer.
the transfer request should come up, when you see those warning signs early in the year or in the
Yeah.
middle of the year, not at just at the end.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what Eric is, you know, when we get to talk to him a little bit.
Yeah,
That'll be good.
yeah.
All right.
Actually, not Eric. Eric is being turned into somebody with a different name I think in the next week. That Eric is just going to go back to the work he was doing at his company, at the company he works for, and somebody else is taking over for Eric.
Really?
Really, yes,
So we got another change.
yes.
Okay.
Well,
Wow.
I
But
have
it's
to
same
ask the
company.
question, as the finance committee, should we be providing that kind of oversight to make sure that those things are happening?
I don't think here's one of the problems we have. We are not responsible for day-to-day operation of the town.
No?
No, we aren't. It's clear, we're not. And so when we start to delve into individual operations within the town, it gets very dicey as to where our responsibility stops and starts. So we have a town administrator,
I
we
wouldn't
have.
consider that a day-to-day responsibility if you're asking whether quarterly reports are being prepared and projections are being made.
And
as
we
to
have
where
asked those
stand
questions, and
financially.
what I'm gonna tell you is, until this whole finance department thing calms down, you're not gonna see it. I'm just telling you, you're not gonna see it.
It's problematic.
I know it is, absolutely.
Just for future reference, somebody in the community said to me, why doesn't the finance committee look at other buildings other than 204? And I said, maybe we will once we get past this season, so just for future reference.
My comment on that is that 204 is the only building I know of that runs exclusively on a revolving account. And that's why we're interested in it. And nothing at the 204 has ever gone out for a townwide vote that I know of, because we've funded everything in free cash. Whether or not the community center, so-called, makes money or not, I mean, we could look at it, it's fine. But I don't think that's as important as getting 204 into an operating budget and getting a revolving account straightened out, in my opinion. I mean,
I just was
You know.
relaying a message that something.
yeah, no, I've heard it too. But,
Okay.
you know, like, what's the next one you want to do? So, all right, any other? All right, hearing none, enjoy Thanksgiving. We'll adjourn the meeting. At this point in time, it is 7:26. Perfect. Thank you.
Good night, folks.
Yeah,
Good
good
night.
discussion,
Good
good
night.
So
discussion.
you had in Costa Rica?
Yeah,
1, 2. Thank you. All right, everybody, have a great Thanksgiving.
you too.
Don't eat too much turkey.
Is a UMass student coming home, I trust, for
Of
Thanksgiving?
course, yeah.
Has she been home yet already?
She has, because we had to put our dog down last Friday, and that was her little pal. Yes, she came home. Anyway,
I'd be happy to talk with you about those spreadsheets if you want, if you need somebody to talk to.
yes, because
Yeah.
I looked at them and I'm
Earlier
like,
today, they
this is
said it was
wrong.
cold.
Well, as I say, I tried to do that, and then it got very confusing anyway, so
Do you want to
I am,
come when I
I
meet with Dana?
am familiar with the
She's no longer
potential
the
difficulties.
Do you want to come with me when I meet with Dana?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Can we review them?
Where's that?
I'd like that, because maybe even you
Oh,
and
yeah,
I
the
could divvy it
lady
up.
was up on
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yeah, Gene
It might be a two-person job,
Brzezinski.
not
Yeah,
a one-person.
yep.
All right.
Person, yeah. She's,
Boy, it got
A
cold
native.
fast, didn't it?
Well, we got
It's a
spoiled.
neighbor of America.
Yeah, we did.
We got spoiled,
Very spoiled. All
The
right,
neighbor
big
against.
time.
hasta la próxima.
Hey, thanks for bringing my name tag in.
I know, well, I didn't want, I didn't want someone
I
to
thought
say,
some
poor
spaghetti
guy,
sauce be
poor
on
guy,
there."
what happened?
He's still up in Sharon.
You take care of yourself, okay?
Thank you.
All
You
right,
too.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Oh, we have to shut this off.
Oh, you didn't hit the button?